Fans love to debate who is the greatest player of all time. But in the sport of hockey, there is simply no conversation. My guest tonight holds 61 records in the NHL, including most goals, most assists, and most points of all time. Wayne Douglas Gretzky is not only the greatest hockey player in the history of the sport, but in 1988, he brought it to the mainstream in America when he was traded to the Los Angeles Kings. He's a four-time Stanley Cup champion, was named the league MVP a record 9 times, and led the NHL in scoring for 10 seasons. But long before his number 99 was retired league-wide, did you know he hand-wrote his first professional contract on a private jet because his dad was too nervous to write? Was invited to try out for the Toronto Blue Jays and played on a team of 10-year-olds when he was just 6. Tonight, we'll learn about what makes this undeniable icon who he is. A man who once famously said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Please welcome NHL Hall of Famer, the great one, Wayne Gretzky.
Very nice. Thank you.
Hi, buddy. I mean, we're already off to a roaring start here, man. You walk out to a standing ovation. Does it get old? Does it get tired?
You know what? I had the pleasure of playing the 1980 All-Star game when I was 17. And Gordie Howe got the greatest applause I ever saw in my life. At Joe Louis Arena, I think he might have been 50 at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, he was so enthralled by it. And I was thinking, wow, if I ever get one of these one day, I'll always appreciate it like he did, so I love it.
Born in Brantford, Ontario, and that's where it all began for you, and there are so many questions about it, but just give me a sense of what life was like in the Gretzky household in Brantford, Ontario back in the day.
Well, I was from a middle-class family. My dad worked for Bell Telephone, and at the age of 2, an uncle of mine gave my dad a pair of skates and said, "Here, let Wayne try these." I started skating at 2.5 years old on a river that ran through the backyard of a farm that my grandparents had. Skated for hours, and it was the love of my life. My dad used to take me to parks and ponds, and he decided one day, I can't do this anymore because it's too cold, so I'm going to build a rink in the backyard so I can sit in the house and watch him. And so at the age of 4, 5, I would get up at 5 in the morning, I'd skate in the backyard, have to go to school, come home at lunch, skate for an hour, get home at 3 o'clock, skate till 11 o'clock. It consumed me. And my dad told me at 6 years old, for whatever reason, the good Lord blessed you and don't blow it. So fortunately, I didn't blow it.
When you know Wayne Gretzky, you know you're a family person, and that started when you were a kid. I'm fascinated by your grandmother.
My dad's sister married an American from Carolina, and they own tobacco farms in just outside of Greensboro. But my mom and dad used to go every summer for 4 weeks to pick tobacco and help them out, and I lived with my grandparents. And I lived on the farm at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and I drive the tractor and kind of grew up living there. And they were a big part of my work ethic. And when people ask me, what's the one thing you want to be remembered as an NHL player, I always say, you know, there's so many great players. Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Mario Lemieux, Mark Messier. But if somebody says, you know what, you worked as hard as any player I ever saw, that's the proudest thing I can hear from a fan.
Well, there's so many things here. First of all, I've read a quote where you said, and I think it kind of gets under your skin a little bit about all of this unbelievable talent being God-given. Somewhere you said along the line, it wasn't just God-given, it was Wally-given, referencing your dad. I mean, it's one thing to be given the tools, and obviously you're different than the rest of the world. But it's another to skate your ass off and end up as great as you. You worked hard at this, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't think I worked hard though.
It was fun.
It was fun. because my dream was to play for the Detroit Tigers.
You were a baseball.
I had more passion and love for baseball. I unfortunately grew up in the wrong country at the time.
Right.
we weren't very good. It's changed a lot. But my passion was to play for the Detroit Tigers. I remember, it was so funny because I had such a passion for baseball that one time I went down to the corner and there's this big open sort of lot. And I took a wheelbarrow down and I filled it up with dirt and I came back and I made a pitcher's mound in the backyard. And my mom was chasing me around the backyard because I ruined the backyard with a big pitcher's mound. And my dad was like, no, it looks good. So I don't know. I had a passion for it and I had a love for sports. For whatever reason, I had the same love and belief to be a professional hockey player. And at the age of 6, I made a 10-year-old hockey team. And there's me there on the
left. I mean, the audience is giggling, and because you're so small.
I got 1 goal that year.
Yeah. I mean,
I know. Look how I was small, right?
Because
that's my goal right there. But you know how old this is? The goalie didn't have a mask on.
But typically, Wayne, when a kid plays up, with other kids that are older than the particular kid, it's because they're bigger than everybody else.
Yeah.
You played up because you were that skilled, that talented.
Well, it was the only team, too. So you tried.
But you were good enough to play with these guys. You obviously were throwing people around.
I actually made the team the year before, and the coach called me.
At 5?
I made the team at 5. And the coach said, all we need is his birth certificate. My dad said, well, he was born in 1961. And he goes, well, hold on, he's 5? And he goes, yeah. He goes, he can't play. I remember I cried for an hour.
Well, thank God they waited for the much more sane age of 6 for you to be out there.
So they let me play at 6, and all those kids were 10 years old. And so what happened was, in those days, he had 15 jerseys, right, for 10-year-olds. And so my jersey was so long that my dad said, oh, my God, you look like a baby out there. And that's how he started tucking my jersey in, so I didn't look so small.
Which carried through your NHL
career. And I just never got away from it.
So this begins this run where, okay, you're 6 here with 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
By the time you're 10, tell the audience how many goals you scored. I can if you can't. The year that you were 10.
I had 400 goals. So
in a season.
We played 80 games.
Did you think about passing at any point?
I had 120 assists.
Okay, well, there you go.
No, so as a 10-year-old, every arena was jam-packed, and there'd be 2,000 people at a game, and I was a normal kid. I didn't even think anything of it.
But people were aware of you. I mean, you were doing interviews at 8.
But it was a bigger world in those days. You know, it's like today where, you know, I like to get up in the morning and have a coffee and read the newspaper. My kids, you know, are on the internet. They know everything that's going on, and the world's smaller. In those days, it was all hearsay. I hear this kid 3 hours away is pretty good, or I hear this guy in the next province is a pretty good player. So you had to sort of build your reputation, and I just was a kid that played.
And yet there seems to be this outside pressure on you building because of the reputation, because of the, hey, you got to come see this kid play. And people are talking about Wayne Gretzky. Did you feel pressure to be great even then?
No, I didn't feel the pressure, but I was 10 years old, and we were invited to play in this hockey game. And the season had ended, and I'm a big believer to this day that when hockey season ends, you should put your equipment away, and you should play soccer or track and field or lacrosse or baseball. And so I was so excited when the season ended to put my equipment away because I loved baseball so much. A week after the season had ended, and that was the year I scored 400 goals, a team from just outside of our hometown had called and said, we want to play this exhibition game. And so the coach came to the house, and he said, we can't play this game if Wayne doesn't want to play. And my dad said, do you want to play? And I said, well, of course I'll play. So we go down to this game. It was very funny. And the arena is this small arena. It was like a practice arena, but they jammed like 1,500 people in there. And I was a kid. I was 10 years old, right? We got beat 8-1, and I didn't play very good.
Who had the 1?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Got in the car, threw my equipment in. I'll never forget as long as I live. And my dad said, "How you doing?" I said, "Great." And I was kind of like a normal 10-year-old kid. Like, I was, all right. He goes, "Well, that just ruined the whole year." And I went, "Ruined the whole year? I got 400 goals." And he said, "You know what? For whatever reason the good Lord chose you, you have to play good every single game. People are coming to watch you."
I think the average person, though, either seated in this audience or me or watching on television at home thinks, well, was that the dad putting undue pressure on the 10-year-old kid? I know you don't feel that way, but maybe talk us through that a little bit.
He never put undue pressure on me if he didn't think I could succeed. If he thought I didn't prepare and then I did fail, he would be disappointed in me. He never got mad at me. But his big thing, my dad's biggest thing in life is he used to always say to me, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And he told me that when I was 9 years old, and I remember thinking, wow, it's so true. And all he wanted you to do is, if I put my effort into it, and that's why he's disappointed in the game we lost 8-1. He thought I didn't care, which honestly I didn't, because I was a last-minute sort of add-on. And you know, it was a lesson that I didn't know at the time. It was a lesson I learned, that I treated and I put my effort into every single game like it was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, I didn't play all good games. I had some bad games, trust me. But I prepared and played like that was the biggest game I was ever going to play in. And it was a lesson I learned at 10 years old. So the pressure never bothered me. My dad used to say, you know what, that's part of life. Pressure is part of life. You got to learn how to accept it and deal with it from a young age, because it's going to be there for forever.
But it fascinates me that while you're a young person, a young boy going through these years of just lighting up a scoreboard, there was also some resentment with whether it's teammates or certainly parents.
Most of the parents were good to me. The envious parents, or the people who were not happy about what I was accomplishing, made it very difficult for me. I was a normal kid. And it just became a point where I said to my mom and dad one day, you know, I really hate going to the arena. This is not fun. And a gentleman came along and he said, I'd love you to come and live in Toronto. And I said to my dad, I said, you know, I think this is a good thing for me. And I moved to Toronto, an hour away, and went and lived with a family I had never met before. And they became my second parents, and to this day, probably were as huge or big an impact in my life as my parents were.
This is in essence, you as a child, I'm a parent, you as a child
moving away from
home.
So, yeah, it's really, it's a different world. In Canada, most kids who are really good move away at 16 or 15. You go live with families, some of them you know, or some of them you may not know. Most of the time, 99% of the time, you become best friends and they become like your family, whether it's myself or guys like Crosby or Mario Lemieux or Robitaille. That's part of what being junior hockey is all about.
When you went as a young boy at the age of 14, there was criticism. Let's take a look at the video.
The minors like to get the most talented kids, and this can lead to bitter squabbling. Take the case of 14-year-old Wayne Gretzky playing in this game. He used to play in Brantford, Ontario, but the Toronto Nationals wanted him badly because he's a superstar, touted as being the next Bobby Orr. In one 78-game series, he scored 333 goals. The Nationals even arranged for Wayne to live with legal guardians in Toronto to meet the residency requirements of the Minor Hockey Association.
But here's, you know what the funny thing about that is? Actually, that was a pretty good goal.
That was a good goal.
No, the unique thing about it was the reason they did it, I wasn't the first kid who ever done it. There was 3 or 4 kids every year that did it.
But you were unique.
And that's why they wanted to make an example out of me. Because I was a little bit more in the limelight, the Canadian Minor Hockey Association stepped in and said, okay, we got to stop this. I went to court and I lost.
Here's your dad's response to what was said.
Do you think they have the right to decide this? No, they can't tell me where to send my own boy. It's our decision, it's our family fight. If he's going to be happy elsewhere, and we decide between the family that that's what we're going to do, that's our decision, it's not theirs. What will it mean to his career? Well, we weren't concerned about his career. All we were concerned about is letting him live a life like everybody else, a 14-year-old boy, and that's all he is.
Well, there's your dad standing up for you. First of all, what does that make you think of when you see your dad doing it?
Oh, you know, for my dad, he's very, I don't know how to say this, but, you know, in the old country, as they say, the people are so close, that family is everything. And so he was so close to his parents and family, obviously. And that's the way he was with us as kids. He treated each and every one of his children the same. I think, I look back at it, and I think it was the hardest thing in his life that he said to me, okay, you should move away from home at 14. And the ironic thing is, I didn't move away to play hockey. That was the bottom line. I moved away from home to be a normal high school student.
So this, in essence, was for you to get out of the glare.
Yeah,
of
that's
being
what's
Wayne
ironic
Gretzky
about
and
it.
Brand-
Yeah, that's the ironic thing. People thought I went there to enhance my hockey career. I didn't. And that's what was so sad about them suspending me.
But that's what your dad's saying in that clip. He's saying he's trying to be a normal 14-year-old boy.
And I don't think they believe this.
So where do you go from there? What happens? You lose the court case.
Yeah. And out of the blue, this guy calls me and says, you should come and play junior hockey. Now, junior hockey is 20 and under. I was 14 years old. I was a kid still. So I said to my dad, what do you think? And he said, well, let's go watch him practice. So we went and watched him practice. And my dad, I could see him, he was kind of shaking. And my dad smoked cigarettes, and I knew when he was nervous, he'd go out in the back of the arena and he'd be like this, because he didn't want to really smoke in front of me, but he was so nervous, he went outside, oh, you can't play here, you can't play here. And I said, well, let's go practice and try practice. So I practiced with them when I was 14 years old, and they were 19, 20-year-olds. And the coach said, you know, you can play. And I played on that team, and sort of the rest is history.
Your dad told you, I believe at a young age, correct me if I'm wrong, don't go where the puck is, go to where the puck's going to be. So that may not be behind the net, but that was at least how you were looking at the game at a young age. Is that right?
Because I couldn't use size or strength as an advantage. My whole thing had to be brains and smarts. And so I had to always sort of try to be one step ahead. When you're 14 years old playing against men, it's a big difference. You know,
were you worried you weren't going to be big enough to play in the NHL?
To death. My size was always a big sort of issue. People always thought, oh, he's too small, he can't play. I was 5'6", 130 pounds. And my coach at the time, who was a huge influence on my career, his name was Gene Poplio. So he says, you should watch Bobby Clarke play hockey. Because in those days, the centerman was a big centerman in front of the net. But Bobby Clarke was this little guy that sort of played in the corner, and that was his game. And I would go down to Maple Leaf Gardens. I'd pay $1 and get standing room, and I watched the warm-up. I watched the game. I watched him play every game on TV. I studied him inside and out. And I became a little Bobby Clarke. I mean, if it wasn't for Bobby Clarke, I probably would have never made the NHL.
It's because he was a smaller guy.
Yeah, and
you were a slight guy.
Yeah, and I started playing behind the net because of him. And that's how I started to learn to play behind the net. So I used the net as a decoy, whereas in the past, everybody said, well, if you go behind the net, you can't score. You got to be in front. And that's how I became sort of the player I became because of Bobby Clarke. And so a guy named John Bassett called me, and John Bassett was this old, great Canadian, and he owned, the time, a team in the WHA, the Birmingham Bulls.
This was like a rival.
WHA is like the AFL or ABA.
It was a rival to the NHL.
Yeah. And I remember he sat down and he said, son, here's $100,000 to play the rest of the year. And I said, okay, Mr. Bassett, I'm in. And he said, but your dad has to sign the contract. And I said, okay. So we called my dad, and my dad said, okay, great, you're going back to school. So I said, Mr. Bassett, I can't play. So
wait, that's important, because your dad is this hard-working,
he was like,
grinding
you're going
guy.
back to grade 11 for the rest of the year. I'm like, well, if it's $100,000, he goes, I said,
so he didn't want to jump at that.
My dad was always under the understanding of, like every other father in those days, go to school, get your education, play sports, and that's fine. But you had to get your education. So turned it down. Went back to high school that year, finished, and then Nelson called. Well, this guy named Nelson Scalbini phoned me out of the blue, said, would you like to play professional hockey? I'm like, yeah.
So Scalbania says, do you want to come play for my
Right.
then Indianapolis Racers?
Yeah. We flew to Vancouver, my mom, my dad, and I. We get to the house, and he goes, you think you can play with men? And I go, yeah, I can. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I could. And he goes, okay. And we went on an 8-mile run. I couldn't run 8 miles today. Got back to the house, and he said, okay, whatever you want. If you can run 8 miles, you can play professional hockey. If I didn't run the 8 miles, I think he would have said, go home. So I said to my dad, I said, Dad, can I borrow $50? I got no money. He goes, here's $200. I know you're good for it now.
Right. What was the deal for? Well, how much did you sign for?
I actually got a $350,000 signing bonus in 1978.
There you are in Indianapolis, and not long after, that whole league is basically full, or the different teams are folded into the NHL, right. Which you end up in Edmonton kind of because of this deal that was made.
So Nelson Scalbini, the owner, said, Wayne, I'm going to trade you. So Winnipeg was there, and Edmonton was there, and my manager again at the time, I said, Nelson said I can go wherever I want, Edmonton or Winnipeg, where should I go? He said, tell him Edmonton. I said, why Edmonton? He goes, they have a new arena. They have a better chance to get in the NHL than Winnipeg. I said, okay, I'm going to Edmonton. So that's how I ended up in Edmonton.
So they become a part of the NHL.
Yeah, so when I got into Edmonton the first day, the very first game I played for the Oilers, I wore number, I think, 24. We played against Winnipeg that night, and I said after the game to Glenn Say, there was a coach, I said, listen, I really want to have number 99. I don't like the number 24. And he said, yeah, but you're going to be a target. And I said, you know what, I'm going to be a target anyway. He said, okay. And I got 99 back. So I wore one game professionally without wearing number 99.
MVP, year one, and Lady Byng, award winner. That's really a side of the game that I think people who know you are most impressed by, the way you are off the ice, the way you carry yourself.
I respected the game, and I learned from my dad. My dad was my idol. You know, I respected the players I played with, and I respected the players I played against. The most unique thing about the Oiler teams, we didn't play to be in the Hall of Fame. We played sort of out of fear and respect for the game, that we wanted to play well, because we loved to play. We were like kids on the pond. We used to take our skates home. We used to live in this little apartment in Edmonton, and we'd take our skates, and we'd jump on the outdoor ponds with kids, and they couldn't believe we were out there, tennis balls, and Kevin Lowe be blocking shots.
This is you as a pro.
Oh, yeah. In 1981, 82, I got 92 goals that year. We used to go on the pond with these kids all the time. It was hilarious. They used to go, oh, my God. And we're like, yeah, bear down.
Like, we're about to carve you up.
That's what it was all about. We had fun. And so the more fun you have, I have mothers who ask me all the time, how many hours a day did you practice? Tell my son. I'm like, I didn't practice. That's what I loved. If you love something in life, whether it's, you know, business or being a doctor or being an athlete, if you have a passion for it, my goodness, the hours are endless that you put in.
Not long after that you guys have now ratcheted up how great you are as a team, and you get into the finals in 1983.
Here's Gretzky. The last word for Gretzky and Billy Smith. It's over. It's tough to take. You can see it written all over his face.
And got sloshed.
Got sloshed. Got 4 games to nothing.
Yeah.
By the Islanders. What did you learn from that loss?
We had a bad goalie.
Oh, yeah.
You got to blame the goalie, right?
Always blame the goalie at the end of the day.
I'll tell you what happened. So in the island, you got to walk by the home team's locker room on the way out to get on the bus. And I remember walking with Kevin Lowe and Mark Messier thinking, oh, my God, I don't want to walk by this room, and it's going to be chaotic. You know, you want
They're going to be celebrating.
And we walked by the room, and it was the most amazing thing we've ever seen. They were just sitting there because they were so physically and mentally beat up. And I remember thinking, as we all walked by, okay, now we understand what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. So as much as a hatred and a rivalry we had with the Islanders, if it wasn't for the New York Islanders and the great players and the great team they had, I don't know if we would have ever won the Stanley Cup, because we learned both on the ice and off the ice what it took to be a champion. That made our team. That made the Edmonton Oilers what it became. And after we lost in the final, in the first year of the Islanders, Glenn Sather, the day before Game 1, called me in his office, and the last thing you want to ever do is get called in Glenn Sather's office. I'm like, oh my God, now what? So I called in, and Lee was standing there. Lee Fogelin was our first captain. And Lee said with Glenn, you should be the captain of this team. It's time for you to be the captain and not me. And Lee said, you know, it's time, you're the guy that's going to get us a Stanley Cup championship. And I remember thinking, of all the guys we respected the most in our locker room was Lee Fogelin. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be the captain. You're the captain. So when I became the captain, Kevin Lowe and Coffey and Messier, we used to hang pictures along the locker room of guys who lifted the Stanley Cup, Bobby Clark and Jean Beliveau and Guy Lafleur. And they used to say to me every day, Gretz, you got to lift the Stanley Cup one day. So they would ignite me each and every day. And our thing, too, was you're not a true superstar until you win a championship. Now, it's different today because of free agency and all that kind of stuff. But in our era, to become a true sort of superstar, you had to be a champion, and we all knew that. And we all took that on our shoulders.
The Edmonton Oilers, by name, the Oilers have won the Stanley Cup.
So we were in the locker room, and, you know, obviously it's jubilation. And in Edmonton, we were playing 6 o'clock games, so it would be on at 8 o'clock in the East. So it's only 8:30, 8:45, and we're all in there. So it's 10:30, it's 11 o'clock. So the locker room's clearing out, and we're all going across the street to the convention center for city's throwing a party, family, friends, business people, whatever. So as we're all leaving at the end, I said to Glenn Sather, I said, Glenn, what do we do with the Stanley Cup? Because, you know, when you win it, you're like, Christ, what do you do with the Stanley Cup?
Now what? Yeah.
Now what? And Glenn was standing there, and he turned to me, and he said, well, you guys won it, take it. So the Oilers, started the tradition of taking the Stanley Cup. So before that, the Islanders, the owner would take it. Montreal, the owner would take it. Toronto, the owner had it. We took the Stanley Cup, and we took it everywhere. So we took it to friends' houses, we took it to restaurants. And the ironic thing was, the Stanley Cup is a magnet. It's the most amazing trophy. The greatest thing about hockey is our trophy. It's a magnet. And everybody wants a picture with it. They want to drink out of it.
That thing's heavy, by the way.
It's very heavy. It's 38 pounds, I think. And I always say that's how the guy who now travels to the Stanley Cup got his job, because the Oilers had so much fun with the Stanley Cup, they finally had to say, we need a guy on the cup.
Yeah, there's somebody that literally travels with the Stanley Cup to make sure it's...
Well, in those days, we won, we'd have it in our city for 2 days. If you were home in your hometown and you won the cup for a day, you call the Hall of Fame, they bring it down to your house. I got pictures in my backyard with my grandmother and my mom and dad with the cup. Now they do a day with the cup, which is nice, you know.
Now this kind of... The horse is out of the barn here now. What changes in your game, if anything? What changes with your motivation? How do you stay on top?
Nothing changed with us. I was on a lunch in 1981, a year before we played the Islanders in the finals, and I was sitting beside Brian Trottier. And I was a kid then, and Brian was one of my favorite players and a great player. And I said to Brian, I said, how's it feel to win the Stanley Cup? And I'll never forget, he said to me, Wayne, it's the greatest feeling in the world. It's just like you own it. And he was like, I wish every player who plays in the NHL could have that feeling. And he said, but that's what makes it great is they can't. And it's so true. When you win it one time, you want it the second time, you want it the third time, you want it the fourth time. It just becomes something you want to own forever.
Edmonton Oilers, the Stanley Cup champions of 1985.
Gretzky has got it up high. And ladies and gentlemen, the Edmonton Oilers have won the 1987 Stanley Cup. The 1988 Stanley Cup champions, the Edmonton Oilers, have won it again.
Tell me, as these championships are happening, you're winning the Stanley Cup, how does the end of this run happen in Edmonton for you?
Oh, unfortunately, because of business. We won our fourth Stanley Cup. Kind of euphoria, obviously. I remember we got back to my apartment around 3:30 or 4 in the morning. That time, my fiance and my dad and my mom and a couple of friends. My mom was cooking bacon and eggs, and we were having some champagne and orange juice. And my dad said to me, you know, the Oilers are going to trade you. And I remember thinking, oh, come on. My dad doesn't drink. And I remember thinking, wow, where's this coming from? And he goes, I didn't want to tell you, this has been going on for a little bit. And I was like, wow, okay. Sort of the rest is history. What is kind of unknown to people is that Peter and I sat down to try to negotiate a deal because I was going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
You're talking about Peter Pocklington, the owner of the Oilers.
And so it was a business decision. I decided not to resign, and he said, I can't let you not resign. I got to trade you. But you can decide wherever you want to go. So we narrowed down to 4 teams. It was, I think, Philadelphia, New York, LA, and Detroit. Became between Detroit and LA.
Anyone involved in a committed relationship who wants to have a family knows that change are brought about by marriage. But I ask you to view this trade the same way Wayne asked me to view his request to be traded. Your move to LA will not only be a tremendous boost to hockey in that city, but in the entire United States.
I'm disappointed about having to leave Edmonton. I truly admire all the fans and respect everyone over the years. Promised Mess I wouldn't do this. But as I said, there comes a time when the ironic thing is that people don't know is that Janet said you should go play in Detroit, and it was my dad who chose LA. He said, for whatever reason, I think you should play in LA. And I ended up in LA King. It was my dad, it wasn't my wife.
Yeah, and then I think that's a sticking point with you, and I'm sure with Janet, because...
No, it doesn't bother Janet.
Yeah, right. Is this wrong, though, to say that Peter Pocklington, the owner, the first man to speak at that press conference, is kind of speaking in half-truths there? I mean, yes, at the end of the process, you wanted to be traded, but it's because the business wasn't working out. He couldn't sign you, and it seemed like he pinned it all on Janet and marriage that you're going to L.A. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Which made Janet public enemy #1 in Edmonton, or Canada.
Number 2.
Or North America, yeah.
Number 2. You know, as I said to Peter, I have a year to go. I'm not going to leave, but I'll give you an opportunity to match any offer that's out there. So In those days, the highest paid player was making $1 million. And the year we won the cup that year, I was making 600,000 Canadian. I just said, you know what, I'm a salary cap for our team, and I need to not only treat this like a business for Wayne Gretzky, but I got to make Messier more money, I got to make Anderson more money, Fuhr more money. I was a built-in salary cap, and
because nobody on the team's going to make more than you.
Yeah, and they all knew that, and Peter knew that, and I knew that. So all I said was, and when he told me that wasn't going to happen, I said, okay, I think it's best we need to do this, because I won't re-sign wherever you trade me. Because if you trade me, I'll leave after a year. So it had to be a mutual agreement. And I understood why he traded me. I didn't like it. People always ask me, how many cups would you have won in Edmonton? You know, maybe we wouldn't have won one more. I don't know. But I know one thing, it was a pretty damn good team.
You come to Los Angeles, and all of a sudden you're like the ambassador for another country for the sport of hockey. I'm interested to know what that felt like. How'd you have to adapt your game?
And I found that to be the biggest transition for me when I got traded from that team to LA. The work ethic and practice was so different. We're talking about a 20th out of 21 teams and a team who won a Stanley Cup. The work ethic was so different. So to try to change that mindset was the biggest challenge I had.
You were part of this special machine in Edmonton, and you get down here and it's like, well, I know why they've been losing.
Yeah. And it's hard to change the culture overnight because you don't want to be a sort of a bad guy. But even the best players, you got to get in their face and say, that's not going to win here. That's not how you win championships, and that's not how you become number one.
So did you get in guys' faces in Los Angeles?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But I was always in a nice way.
And then when you come back to Edmonton as an LA King, you know, whether there was bitterness and bad feelings and everything else, the people of Edmonton let you know exactly what they thought of you when you came back, and we have video of that.
But I think the true heartfelt show of emotion we're going to hear from the Northlands Coliseum fans is what Gretzky will cherish and remember the most.
We'll have a watch on this standing O, and it is about to take place here at the Northlands Coliseum. He's entering the ice area right now.
What a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, led by number 31, Ryan Fuhr, the NHL.
Four minutes.
Yeah.
A 4-minute standing ovation.
So I was saying,
What's going through your gut when you're skating, when you hop out from behind the boards?
why am I here right now? I say this all the time publicly, that the worst thing for me in my career was having to go back and play against Edmonton. I always didn't like it. I was always uncomfortable with it. Edmonton's a unique city because it's not a big city. And I was aware of everything. I knew when my dad would get up and go get a glass of Coke. I knew if a friend of mine was at the game, he sat down at the 8-minute mark. And people are amazed by this, but I remember I knew everything. I was so aware of the whole arena. And in Edmonton, it's not a big city, so I knew section 21, who was sitting there and who was sitting there. And so it becomes like family. It's not even so much fans. It's probably like St. Louis Cardinals baseball. You know people who are sitting around that area, right? And so I understood that. So when I always played in Edmonton, I really, really was uncomfortable. I never liked it. I never enjoyed it because the people there were always so good to me. They treated me like one of their own, like nobody ever bothered me. I went to dinners, I went out with people, I went out with friends. People wanted to get autographs, or in those days a picture, but nobody ever bothered me. So I was so uncomfortable my whole career playing against the Edmonton Oilers. It wasn't fun for me.
And yet how ironic that when you break the all-time points record, which was held by your hero, Gordie Howe. Now listen to this. It happens in Edmonton in a 1-goal game. He's playing for the Kings. Edmonton is winning by 1 goal. And here he is breaking the all-time points record.
Oilers win the draw. Kevin Lowe off the glass, kept in by Duchesne. A rolling puck. Taylor Gretzky scores! As the Oilers went nearly 3 periods, holding him to 1 point.
I mean, how about that? The Oilers, that's incredible. I mean, this is an entire arena that is putting the game to the side and celebrating you.
Well,
you just tied the game.
Yeah, they're great fans. And I was saying, the funny thing was the second game I played in Edmonton, Mess was behind me, and the puck was going in the corner. It was one of those things where you're like, okay, I don't want to go in there. I know Messi is going to hit me really hard. Because I practiced against him for 10 years. I'm like, oh, God, here we go. Mess is big. I'm small. Mess is big. So he's behind me, and he goes, okay, I'm right behind you. I'm thinking, okay, great. And he carries me into the boards and hammers me. And, you know, when somebody warns you, you kind of you can roll it. It's like WWE. You can kind of roll
right.
It, right? And he got a standing ovation. I said, well, I guess my time's up. But you know what? Like I said, it was always difficult for me to play in Edmonton.
We have this quote on the wall: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Now,
I'd like to claim the quote, but it's really my dad's quote. He told me one morning, we were driving to practice, and he said, you know, Wayne, you got to start shooting the puck. I'm like, Dad, well, I got a lot of goals. And he goes, yeah, but you got to shoot the puck more. And he goes, you know, 100% of the shots you don't take, you don't score. So one day, media was around, and I said the quote. And of course, it became a very popular quote. And 25 years later, I said to my dad, I said, I think that was really your quote.
Right.
I took all the credit for it.
And that to me is what leads me to what your dad told Janet. I talked to Janet, and she said that your dad said early on, maybe right when you got engaged, you know, this story's been written.
Yeah.
Whatever we do in and around Wayne, this has all been written. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So he's always known that you were different.
He's a special man, my dad. And like I said, monetary things didn't mean anything to him. Dreams are everything to my dad. Opportunity is everything to my dad and my family. And
the interesting thing is, and what I've known you to be, just the casual times I've met you, or friends of yours that we have in common, they'll tell you Wayne Gretzky is the nicest guy. And I think people here can appreciate that. That's the real tribute. That's the real tribute to your grandmother, to your mom and dad, to your younger siblings. I mean, there's something in you that didn't change with all the greatness.
I'm still the same person I was when I was 10. When I was 10 years old meeting Gordie Howe, or when I was 18 years old meeting Muhammad Ali, or when I'm 50 years old shaking Magic Johnson's hand, it's still the same to me. Like, you have to have an appreciation in life, and I never ever stopped having that.
I want to wind this down, and I know where you're going to take this, because you're going to push this off. But you retire, and the league changes the rule for how long you have to wait to go into the Hall of Fame. It's 3 years typically. You walk away, it's right into the NHL Hall of Fame. They retire your jersey number league-wide.
We will officially retire his famous number 99, a number that has never been worn by another Oiler, and now a number never to be worn by any player in the National Hockey League.
The only other person I can think of that applies to is Jackie Robinson in Major League Baseball. Nobody will ever wear 99 in the NHL the rest of time. What did that mean to you when that happened?
Well, first of all, who'd want to wear that number?
Oh, yeah. Besides every kid growing up in Canada.
You know, it's a catch-22. I had an idol, Gordie Howe. I wish I could have worn number 9. I think it's respect. I also understand, it's a great compliment. I don't know, my son had to introduce me at this event one day, and he's like, Dad. And every now and then I get egotistical at the house. We all should, right? And then my son said, Dad, what do I write down? Like, how many goals, how many assists, how many points, playoff goals, playoff points? I said, Ty, I don't know. Just say the most. He was like, I can't say that. So every now and then when you're at home, you got to be egotistical, right?
I'll ask you simply, what's next? I'm shocked that Wayne Gretzky is not in the game today.
Right now, I'm loving my life, not having the stress and the pressure of having to win every single day and win every game. It's ironic because, we go out and we play tennis, we play golf, and people go, wow, you're not that competitive. And I always say, I did that for 40 years.
Right.
Now I like to have fun. If I'm playing tennis with friends or playing golf with friends, we love to play. One day, maybe I'll be back in hockey. Everything I have in life is hockey. The league's been great to me. The commissioner of the league, they've been wonderful to me. Right now, I'm just enjoying, when I go to a city and I say, I really like that kid. Can I go down to the locker room and say hello? And I can go down to the locker room.
You ask?
Oh, all the time. I called the Ducks. I said, can I get a couple of tickets for Game 7 against Chicago? They're like, yeah. You want to sit with the owner? I'm like, no, I want to sit down by the ice. I like sitting with the fans and just enjoying the game. So I'm loving that part of it now that I never had that chance to do.
And before we go to these questions, I'm calling bullshit on the golf thing. Because I've seen you in member guests. Let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, that's a tournament, though.
Okay, Wayne Gretzky, he doesn't like to lose at anything.
Well, I'm not as bad as
liar.
I'm not as bad as my wife.
You're a liar.
My wife's more competitive than I am.
All right. What we do is we have 5 questions here at the end. They're fun. They have not been read by me. Your wife, Janet, told me that you're a giggler.
Oh, yeah.
She said, I'll walk by, he'll be the only one in the room watching The Big Bang Theory, and he'll be cackling out loud to himself. Here we go. Would you rather live in an igloo or live in a teepee?
I'm going to go with the teepee. It's got to be warmer, right?
It's got to be warmer.
Okay, that's
you can't grow up in Ontario and say...
teepee. I grew up just outside the Six Nations Reserve, and this is a great stat for you people to know. Hockey's not Canada's sport. Lacrosse is Canada's sport.
And true or false, you learned how to dodge checks in hockey because of lacrosse.
Box lacrosse.
Would you rather fight a full-grown lion or 75 angry house cats?
Really?
Really. One lion, maybe he's a nice lion, or 75 really pissed off house cats?
Well, I hope the lion is Simba.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Simba.
You're going to go with Simba?
Yeah, be another cat fight.
Although, with your great peripheral vision, maybe the 75
No, I'm going with Simba.
Would you rather lose your keys or lose your cell phone?
Doesn't matter because I got a BlackBerry. Nobody uses BlackBerry, right? I'm Canadian.
Who's on the other end of it? Obama?
Yeah, my kids think I'm iconic. They're like, Dad, you got a BlackBerry still? I'm like, yeah, it's Canadian. And I don't own a car, so I don't have keys.
What do you mean you don't own a car?
I don't have a car. I don't have a car.
How do you get around?
Janet has a Range Rover, and when I need it, I jump in it. But I'll tell you a great stat. I won 23 cars in my career.
Yeah, I was going to say.
23. That's got to be a record, right? Now,
where's the Rolls Royce you got from McDonald when you showed up?
I gave it away to a family friend. I gave every car ever won, I gave away. I won 23. One year I won 4 cars. It's like a commercial, right? MVP, Stanley Cup, 4 cars, priceless.
Right. It's good to be in the Gretzky family.
But I gave every car away.
Would you rather have to speak pig Latin for the rest of your life or talk like Yoda?
Who's ready to...
Just answer the question!
I don't even know how to answer that.
Well, I mean...
Can I pick somebody in the audience?
Answer the question, you must. Answer it.
I'm going with that. Whatever that voice was.
Great one, you are. Last one. That's the good part. Would you rather have a neon mohawk or a really bright orange mustache?
I'll go with the neon mohawk because I had two boys that did it one time in their lives.
And you let that happen in the Gretzky house?
Oh, yeah. You got to let them sort of... I had a son who came home with an earring one time, and he was 16, and my wife said, oh, my God, she had a complete meltdown. I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it. I was coaching at the time, so I got it handled. So we were driving to practice that day, and I said, by the way, if you walk through the locker room there, keep that earring on. I said, you can keep your earring. He was gone.
Well, he's not only the greatest to ever play in the sport of hockey, he's also, as I think you can tell, a wonderful human being. Ladies and gentlemen, the great one, Wayne Gretzky.
Thanks, Joe.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.